Chapter 29 of One Commonplace Day by Pansy. This recording is in the public domain. Only a question of time. How did it happen? Who can tell all the hows of these things? Why is it that just at the wrong moment people who have been on the alert for weeks must relax their vigilance? On almost any other evening of the previous month it would have been impossible for John Hartzell to have eluded all the friends who were bent on saving him. But on this particular evening they went their various ways, apparently so satisfied because God had interposed and forever saved old Joel Hartzell, that they forgot the human side of the struggle and went home to rest. Mr. Cleveland, in slippers and dressing gown, sat before his open grate and told his mother about the look of dignity with which death had touched even the old man's features, and said, reverently, "Though I believe it was not death, but immortal life, which left that impress. Is it not wonderful to think of old Joel in heaven?" It was about that time that old Joel's son descended again into the mouth of hell. He did not intend it. Oh no, I do not suppose there has yet lived a man who intended deliberately to descend from respectability into ruin. He returned the chairs, and in a grave and manly way expressed his thanks. He went into the grocery and bought and paid for a small sack of flour. In doing so he took out and held in his hand for a moment several quarters and a $50 while he counted out the change. I will not say that there was not a sense of satisfaction in so doing. There was such a recent past in which to have counted out money for flour would have seemed to him almost a miracle. The grocer was friendly, and held him for a moment in conversation. He had ordered him from his doorstep more than once, but if a man was going to be respectable and jingle money in his pocket, it was as well to look out for custom. On the steps stood two young fellows, gay, thoughtless, not exactly heartless, save as rum had silenced their higher natures. "Look at John," said one. "He is counting out the quarters as though they grew on the Flats." "They are crowing over him down at the temperance meetings. He is quite the fashion, I hear. A brand plucked from the burning. Still I heard that he wouldn't sign their pledge." "Oh no, he won't. He prides himself, they say, on his iron will. Think of John Hartzell with a will so iron that a glass of whiskey wouldn't bend him." Then they laughed. "Do you suppose he will stick?" This from a third young man, one with a meaner face than the others. One of those low, laughing faces belonging to the fellow who has sunken low enough to do anything just for a joke. "Stick? No, of course he won't. It is only a question of a few days. When one sees the disgusting fuss that is being made over him, one is tempted to wish that he would hurry up and get back into the gutter. Did you see that parade at the funeral of old Joe to day? Carriages and all that sort of thing. That fellow Cleveland who thinks he was born to rule the country leading the procession, looking as solemn as a priest. I would like to see that man brought down in some way. He is so far above the common people that he will hardly bow to them on the street." What is the meaning of this astonishing confusion of logic? Only personal pique and political differences of opinion. Mr. Cleveland did not, it is true, recognize this young man as a friend. They had not a thought in common. That they had quarreled could not be said, because Mr. Cleveland would not quarrel; but that they differed essentially on all questions was true, and in the nature of things necessary. Either oil or water must change its nature before both can mix. Then spoke the nature which was on the alert for fun. "It would be a rich thing to see the faces of the fanatics when their pet tumbles again." "I declare I should like to be around. I wonder how long the reform will last." "I wouldn't be afraid to wager that I could have him in a state which would edify my Lord Cleveland by 10 o'clock to night." "Oh no, not so soon as that. He has just buried his father, you know." "What of that? Much he cared for his father. Haven't you heard him swear at him like a trooper? I tell you, John Hartzell is playing a game on the rich old maid. That is all he is about." "If I thought that, I'd like to expose him." Don't think I am going to give you the entire scene. I have only hinted at the motives which were brought to bear on the three natures as they stood on the steps and watched John Hartzell with his silver. They had never moved in his set, those three; they were several grades above him. It was, therefore, an added pat to his pride when they accosted him in a friendly way and expressed sympathy with him in his recent affliction. It was a most unusual thing that they should walk along the street with him. Was he at work now on anything in particular? Asked the young fellow who was searching for fun. Did he know Burton of the lower mill? He was looking for a reliable man to secure permanently. Perhaps Hartzell would like the chance. Step in here and let us wait for him. He will pass presently on his way uptown. In here was a saloon of the better sort. It had a soda fountain in summer and a refreshment table in winter where oysters were served, and it was patronized occasionally by thoughtless temperance people when they wanted cigars or oysters, and did not want to go uptown any farther. John did not hesitate. He had reformed. He never meant to drink another drop of intoxicating liquor. He was as ignorant of his own heart as ever a baby was. He prided himself on his strong will. He was not afraid to go into saloons. "Have a glass of beer, Hartzell? No? You have discarded the whole thing, have you? Why, I thought beer was innocent enough. Well, some people have to deny themselves, I suppose." Was there a covert sneer in the tone? Was there a hint that he could not drink a glass of beer if he wanted to? Wild and preposterous to you as it may seem, he honestly thought he could. What, John Hartzell, who only a few weeks before had told Miss Wainwright that he had tried 1,000 times to give up the stuff, and could not? Yes, the very man. Don't you see, he had done it. 6 weeks since a drop of liquor had been tasted. The work was accomplished, so he thought. The battle fought. He was a free man now. Yet the smell of that beer, as the gentleman quaffed it, made him fairly dizzy with its suggestions. And yet he was not warned. Don't expect me to explain it. I verily believe there is no human explanation which can fit the story. But don't you know by your own observation all about the strange, blind infatuation and foolhardiness of the reformed drunkards who are trusting to their own will power? If you do not, you are certainly not a very experienced temperance worker. Where were the temperance workers that evening? Why did there not pass by a man who could help this tempted soul who yet did not understand himself well enough to know that he was in mortal danger? One passed by who might have helped. At least, he might have tried. He did not go blindly. He paused and thought of the danger. That one was Charlie Lambert. A temperance man? Oh, yes, he drank no liquor. He had no temptation to drink any. A pledged man? Oh, no, he saw no occasion for that. Certainly not, so far as he was concerned. An advocate of the license system? Well, hardly, and yet it was certainly better to have this thing regulated by law if people must have it among them. Oh, then he believed in getting it out from among them? Well, no, he did not consider that expedient. In fact, it was something which could not be done. Why not? Well, the country was not ready for it. How was the country to be gotten ready for it? By continuing to accept the business as legal and under protection? Oh, well, he was not a fanatic on this subject. He believed in individual opinion. And in this way could Charlie Lambert dance around in a peck measure for a whole week at a time, and call it arguing. Still, he did not believe in drunkards. Oh, no, it was a disgraceful thing to get drunk. In fact, I tell you he did not believe in moderate drinking. He had not so much excuse as that for his slippery position. He knew John Hartzell, and he saw him distinctly in that saloon, and paused, and said to himself, "That is no place for that fellow. He ought to know better." Why didn't he go in, and at least look as much in the face of John Hartzell? There was one curious reason why he did not. 1, 2, 3, 5 young men he saw in there, who were acquaintances of his. Friends, indeed, in a general way. The proprietor of the saloon was a good fellow. He often took his lunch at that place. He had stopped there for soda almost every day during the summer. What an embarrassing thing for a young man like him to step in there and try to rescue John Hartzell. It was too much to expect. After all, John might be only waiting for something. Besides, he would go to drinking again, of course. No confidence could be placed in the reformation of such drunkards as he. And Charlie Lambert passed by on the other side. "Come now," said the gentlemanly proprietor, "you fellows are getting too noisy. We don't have such scenes in here. Some of you must get Hartzell out of here. This is no place for him." This was 2 hours after Charlie Lambert had passed. By that time the respectable oyster saloon was no place for him. He must go lower down. One of the loungers agreed to take him by the arm and lead him away. "Coax him home, Jimmy," whispered the gentlemanly fellow who had started out for fun. He had had his fun, and someway it left a bitter taste. Jimmy nodded, but he might as well have undertaken to coax a panther back into its cage after it had scented its prey. What John Hartzell wanted now was rum, and rum he would have. A whistling boy went past just as he reeled into a more pronounced saloon lower down. The whistling stopped, and the boy stood for a moment horror stricken. It was surely John Hartzell. What could he do? Where was everybody? He stood only a moment, then ran on swift feet around the corner. Dr. Brandon's house was the nearest, but Dr. Brandon was not at home. He hurried up the stairs to Lloyd McLean's boarding house, but Lloyd McLean's room was dark and his door was locked. Then home, father might have come and father would go to the rescue. No, Dr. Copeland had not returned. The boy was panting and almost breathless. He burst into the parlor, where sat Fannie and Mr. Bruce. He had but one question to ask. "Do you know where Mr. McLean is?" No, certainly Eben Bruce did not know. He had not seen McLean in a week. What was the matter? "They must have got hold of John Hartzell," Holly said, still breathless. "They are making him drink. If I knew where he was, I guess he would know something to do. He is with the others a great deal." The pronouns in the latter part of the sentence referred to Lloyd McLean. Then the boy rushed away. Fannie and her friend looked at each other. "Poor fellow," said Fannie. "He is almost wild over that wretch of a John Hartzell. He was so attached to Kate. He seems to be determined that John shall reform. I suppose nothing is more hopeless. It is only a question of time when people get as low as he." Eben Bruce shivered a little. "Yes," he said slowly, "I suppose it is only a question of time." Holly rushed to his mother. "Oh, mother, if you would let me just run down to Mr. Cleveland's. I can go in 15 minutes. I came home at 9:30 as you said. But they have got hold of him, the fellows have, and they are making him drink. Mr. Cleveland would know what to do. May I go, mother? Say yes, quick, do, please. I have lost so much time already." Could she let him go? He was only a boy, and the streets were full of snares for boys. And it was the wildest sort of an idea. What could Mr. Cleveland or any man do? Poor miserable wretch! Of course he would drink. As if anybody did not know that. She was sorry for Kate. Yes, she was genuinely sorry. She had sent her a black cashmere dress to wear to the funeral, and a black wrap, which she told her to keep. But Kate had been utterly wild to hope anything for that miserable brother. It was a good thing that the father had died. It was an infinite pity that the brother had not died years ago. Holly must not think of such a thing as going out again. It would do no good. It might do great harm. Then Holly went away to his room. He kissed his mother good night, mournfully, his lip quivering and quivering, so that he could hardly bear it. Once in his room, the door locked, he sat down, all hot and trembling as he was, and cried great burning tears. Then he walked up and down the room, even as Kate and John Hartzell's wife were doing at that moment. "I hate it," he said, clenching his hard young fist. "I hate it. I wish I were a man this minute. I would do lots of things. I would have rooms, bright, light rooms, and people on the watch, and a man at every corner to run to when folks were in trouble, and I would fight it all ways at once, and I will. I'll fight until there is not a drop to be had on the globe. That's the thing. None to be had. Then they can't get it. That will end the matter. And I believe it is the only thing that will. God wants it so, for he says that no drunkard shall go to heaven, and rum makes drunkards, and always has, and always will. Then people who want folks to go to heaven have got to get rid of the rum. There is no other way. I am glad to tell you that this boy got down at last on his knees. There he sobbed out his bitter story, and from thence he arose calmed. He had done what he could. It is true that the sum of it had been nothing. But the divine heart whispered to him, "Never mind, my boy. God knows, and God reigns." Well, there is a rift, I suppose, in every cloud, however dark. In the midst of all these bitter scenes, Holly Copeland's education was progressing. End of chapter 29.